Hey everyone, today we're taking a look at a free AI image generator that does something a little different. And I've got an interesting experimental workflow for it that allows for controlled poses and consistent characters. Well, almost consistent characters, but we'll get to that in 1 second. Today, we're taking a look at Prome.AI, who are sponsoring this video. I have looked at Prome on the channel in the past, but they've added some new features. And what I really like about Prome is that the platform very much encourages you to bring whatever artistic skills you have to the table. Okay, so let's dive in. So when you first log into Prome.AI, you'll be greeted with a number of modules. Creative Fusion and Relight are the two newest ones. Relight, of course, doing what the name implies, it will take any image and you can then relight it. I think that most of you are familiar with the concept of outpainting, and erase and replace is essentially inpainting. There's also an image variation section where, as the name implies, you can vary your images. So I took a photo of a deer that I shot, that's an actual photo of a deer, not AI generated, and gave it some variations, and we got this. Yeah, that's pretty solid, but here's something funny that I ran across. I was playing around with it and accidentally left in the prompt a man in a blue business suit walking in the city with my deer photo, and ran it, and we got this. We got our man in a blue business suit, not some weird man-deer hybrid. But what's interesting is that it has sort of the tonal feel of the wilderness shot. Sketch rendering is probably the module that you'll want to start off with first if you've never used Prome.ai. So just to show you what it does, we're going to start with this image that I cribbed off of Leonardo.ai. This is an image that we've used on the channel a number of times in the past. Yes, it is kind of cheesecakey. I don't know. I like the image. What can I say? But the real reason I keep using it is because I find it endlessly funny that the original prompt called out for someone named Danielle van den Donk, and I had to look up who that was, and it turns out she is a Dutch football player that does not look like this pirate at all. Anyhow, bringing our Daniela pirate image into Prome, we can then begin working with one of the various stylizers, and there are a lot of them. Now, Prome does have a paid tier, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but one of the things that I like about the fact that it has a free tier is that it really gives you a chance to explore all of the various different modules to see what Prome is capable of. So I'm going to choose the film stylizer and then move over to render mode. There is precise, concept, space, and outline, and all four of them do lead to very different results. So you're definitely going to want to experiment around with each one of them. And then you have an option to actually add in a positive and negative prompt as well. This was something that we didn't have previously in Prome, so this is a pretty welcome addition. That said, I'm just going to leave this as is and just run it, which results in this image, which is really impressive. It retains all of the qualities of our Leonardo output Daniela pirate, but now giving it a very lifelike and cinematic look. Yeah, this is pretty cool. It still does not look like the real Daniela van den Donk, but that's okay. It's not supposed to do that. So some things that stand out to me, number one is that the pose is completely and totally dead on. The hands are actually really good. As we know, AI always struggles with hands, but our photographic cinematic Daniela pirate, her hands are completely fine. Now, if there is an issue, maybe here in that waist section, as you can see, that kind of lost the jacket there, but that's something that could very easily be inpainted back in. But what I think is most interesting about using sketch rendering is the fact that you can take anything that you draw, no matter what your skill level, bring it into Prome and get some pretty stellar results out of it. For example, over at my house, the anime bug has hit the kids. So there are plenty of drawings like this all around the house. So we're going to try it out with the stylizer of Japanese manga. I'm going to move the render mode over to outline, and then we're going to try out text prompting here as well. Blue hair, which is a very anime-ish thing. And then I'm going to call out the red hearts that she put here as red hearts floating. So let's see what Prome generates. And after a few moments, we end up here. Now, admittedly, there is a little bit of weirdness. Obviously, I think the eyelashes here, which were sort of over-exaggerated in my daughter's original sketch, got translated into kind of it almost looks like it wanted to be glasses, I think. And it also looked like it struggled a bit with the arm kind of in this pose, which is kind of understandable. I mean, this is a kid's drawing. I'm not bashing on it. Obviously, it is my kid. She is still working on rendering and anatomy. That said, I was really impressed that it picked up on the necklace here and actually turned that into a heart. I presume that it picked up on that from the red heart prompt that I gave it earlier. One thing that was asked last time we looked at Prome was, can it actually color professional comic book pages? So I grabbed an image of Batman by Jim Lee and ran it through Prome, and this was the result, which is pretty much on point. It did miss, the yellow of the bat signal, but that's something that could very easily be, I wouldn't even use in painting or erase and replace for this. Honestly, the easiest answer to this is just to bring it into Photoshop and repaint that yellow around it. But yeah, for the most part, this is more or less ready to go. Now, Creative Fusion is where things start to get interesting. And this is kind of the road to consistent characters and posable characters. So with Creative Fusion, you can take an image and sort of style map it to another image. So there are a number of presets built in. But what's really interesting is that you can add your own custom images into it. So for this example, I ended up using a cowboy that I rolled up in Midjourney, resulted in this, which admittedly is just kind of okay. If anything, I'm actually just really impressed that it managed to pull this off, considering that the two images couldn't be further apart. But it did get me thinking, could you use a 3D skeleton or character to do this? And don't worry, you don't actually need to know how to use any 3D packages to pull this off. So Miximo is a completely free 3D character animation platform from Adobe. The link to it is down below. The way it works is that you have sort of this camera control here, rotation, you have a pan button here where you can go up and down, you can zoom in or zoom out, and then reset the camera off. First thing you'll want to do is grab a character. I have found that it's best to kind of aim for a character archetype of something that you're looking for. In this case, I'm kind of aiming for maybe a Viking thing, so old Dreyer here will do. From here, you just come up to animations and choose a rough animation that kind of suits what you're looking for. So Dreyer here is now doing a crouch to stand, and we can control our camera by sort of moving it around. Just pause your image wherever you would like on the scroll. So let's start at about here. And then now we can begin rotating our camera to find our placement. So, okay, I think this looks actually kind of cool. And like, all we have to do here is just screenshot it. So taking our Miximo output and then mashing him with the style preset of a Viking. And now we have this, which is pretty impressive because again, we now actually have the exact pose that we were looking for. Now, what if you want to use your own character? Well, that's where things get kind of interesting. So I ended up generating an animated character model sheet. Prome does have its own AI image generator down here if you just want to do one-stop shopping. And then it was back to Miximo to create some character poses and camera angles. So one of the characters, Eva here, we definitely sort of fit the profile of the character we had generated. So I ended up grabbing a frame here and then screenshotting it, and it was back over to Prome. So now by using Creative Fusion with our character model reference sheet and our 3D Miximo image gets us this, which is pretty good, but we're not quite done yet. From here, taking our Creative Fusion output and bringing it into Sketch Render, and then running the Sketch Render film profile gets us this, which is pretty crazy because we've just gone from this like low-res 3D character to this. And this is relatively repeatable as well. Taking this Miximo output, bring it back over to Creative Fusion, and then taking that into Sketch Render for this output. Now, I will say that there is an issue with wardrobe. It's not exactly consistent across the board. It has the relative idea, but it is not exact. That said, it is the same character across all three. Wardrobe consistency is something that will probably come along at some point or another, but for now, I think that if you're using these outputs to generate something like, Pika videos, where you're creating trailers for things, you could probably get away with the fact that your character kind of changes clothes between scenes. The other idea is to go with very basic wardrobe styles. For example, this was a Miximo pose that I skinned with James Bond, and the output is, pretty much a tuxedo because tuxedos don't change that much. That said, if you use the text prompt James Bond running, you might end up with James Bond in a tuxedo and running pants. Personally, I think if I'm ever running a marathon, I turn around and I see this lunatic behind me, yeah, I'm stopping for a water break. Finally, if you want to take any of your looks and revert them back to an artistic look, you can come down to Photo to Sketch, which has a number of different attributes to it as well. I personally really like, under Art Sketch, there is a comic look, and if you run that on this image, you end up with this, which I think is a really, really cool style. Here's another one where I took a Miximo pose, kind of doing the Leo strut, and then turned him into a Viking, and then turned him into a comic book. So yeah, I very much am a fan of what Prome.AI is doing. Again, there is a free tier that is actually pretty solid, and I highly recommend trying it out on the free tier, just because there are so many different styles that you kind of have to get accustomed to what everything does. So if you're inclined, please do give Prome.AI a shot, and let me know what you guys think of the whole 3D to 2D character workflow. I know it's a lot of steps, but I think it's actually pretty promising. My thanks to Prome.AI for sponsoring this look at their platform, and I thank you for watching. My name is Tim.